committee needs to have clear guidelines, right? And the only thing that saved them was that I truly believe that SMU's QB had money against himself.
It was a couple teams that should have been in there. Let's just call it spade for spade. Let's call it what it is, all right? And it is hard to win on the road in the SEC.
Hey, if you think Florida would do that good in the Big Ten, just go to the Big Ten then. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Social Club where everyone has a voice. I am your host, Jacob Hale, joined with me by Cam Saunders. Take care of some housekeeping stuff. Go ahead, like, follow, subscribe, join us on Discord. If you haven't already, we did have a playoff bracket challenge that's ongoing now, so it's too late for you to join. But with that being said, go ahead and join the Discord, have some fun, talk ball with us, give us your thoughts, all of the above. All that's good. And now to start it off, first thing I want to say before I introduce the topic is I want to give a shout out to Zach Zabrowski for being a two-time Harlan Hill winner. Me and Kim went to this University of Central Missouri and we both played football there. So seeing another mule like that shine and the greatness that he's done, it's great to see. I never met him personally, but I have seen him play before, and he's definitely the real deal. So, I would just say from one mule brother going to another mule brother, just want to say congratulations to you. And hopefully, we see you watching football for many more years because he definitely has the talent for it.
Right. Hey, so for anybody that don't know what he's talking about, the Harlem Hill is basically the Heisman of Division Two. So for anybody who don't know, that is a big deal in the Division Two world for all the Division Two athletes or people who've been through Division Two. You know how big that is to win the Harlem Hill twice. So that's big time. And for any recruits out there, hey, you can win it twice at UCM. So make sure y'all go to UCM. Make sure y'all mention Man Hill sent you. We got all the gear. Hey, we building a new indoor facility. Hey, everything's going up at UCM, so just make sure y'all keep that in mind.
Yeah, use the code The Social Club and get 10% off your books at UCM.
Hey, you gotta pay the bills on here.
But anyway, congratulations to you for sure. Now, and starting the actual topic, we want to talk about the first round of playoffs. A lot of people have a lot of things to say. Talk about the good and the bad. I think the overall general question that's going to be about this is really just the fact that did the committee get it right? Is this what we wanted to see in college football and in the playoffs here? And I'll pay it over to you, Cam. I'll let you start this off. What are your thoughts on this?
All right, so first couple things, right? My thoughts about the college football reaction. One, the first big takeaway that I gotten from it is that home field advantage matters. All right, let's just get that out of the way. Home field matters in the first round of the new college football bracket. As you can see, home field advantage had a big impact on the game. Right, you ain't playing at a neutral site. You actually go into the home team's field, and that atmosphere that I saw from all four of them stadiums round one was electric, and that it was just something that everybody should witness in person or should at least watch the game. That's one. So home field. Two, it was a couple teams that should have been in there. Let's just call it space for play. Let's call it what it is. All right. Before we talk about SMU, before we talk about Indiana, I want to talk about Tennessee. Let's just hit the nail on the head. Right. I'm going to be honest. It's very hard to win at the Ohio State University, right? But let's just call it space for space. One, Tennessee was banged up. Let's just call it what it is. Tennessee was banged up. They was outclassed and it was outperformed. I give credit when credit is due. But that's just what happens when you play an SEC schedule. You cannot manage playing against gauntlet teams and think you're going to walk into the best team in the Big Ten and win. They play their schedule. If you want to throw SOS in, it can be an argument there that other teams could have got in over Tennessee, but they had the record SEC. They put up a fight, good game, whatever. Now let's talk about SMU and Indiana. I told you that was going to happen. I told you that was going to happen from the get-go. SMU, Indiana had no business being there. Indiana, no excuses. No excuses. Big Ten's supposed to be the best conference in football. You're 10-1. You got to win them games. I don't care what it is. I don't care what they had. Indiana as the third best team in the Big Ten, and you go in there and you lay an egg like that. No excuses at all. No excuses. SMU should have been there in the first place. So I get the blowout. All right, I'd rather have the blowouts happen in the first round than the second round. Right. For an example, Boise State has no reason getting a first week bye. Have no reason getting a first week bye. We gotta do something about the placement because it's no reason why Boise State should have a first week bye. They should have played the first round. Good wins from all the teams. I expected to happen. The main thing I took from is that SMU and Indiana wasn't supposed to be there, and home field advantage matters.
You got all that out?
Got all of
Got
it.
everything you wanted to say
Got
out?
all of it out.
Guys, he's been waiting like a day and a half to say all this. I love it. I love it. Man, I'm so glad you did that because I can knock down all of your points really quickly at all that. So, first thing I'm going to say is I think the committee 100% got it right. I think it was perfect. Everything that we wanted as a fan, we got it. And now that we got it, now we're going to find new ways to complain about it. But going into Indiana, Indiana's tricky because I heard all the things about that, and I understand people's point and how they feel about Indiana. But the thing I'll say about Indiana is Indiana, Purdue, or no, sorry, not Purdue, Indiana, Penn State, teams like Notre Dame, things like that. That's a clear path to make it to the playoffs, and the committee made it clear that's their path to make it to the playoffs. That it's about wins more than it is about the quality of who you're going against, right? And I'll break this down even further, right? So this is what I think about it. I think they did a great job because the entire reason we have a 12-team playoff is because of situations like these. So the SMUs in the world, so the Boise States of the world actually have a legitimate chance of making it to the playoffs, at least having an opportunity to showcase their talent, right? People forget because people have revisionist history. You forget last year, this was the exact same argument, and this is why they kicked Florida State out because Florida State was undefeated. But the committee had to sit there and say, well, we have to put the four best teams in. So we're just going to argue that the two-loss Alabama team deserves to be in there over Florida State, even though Florida State won all of their games, were ACC champions. And their only argument was because their starting QB got hurt. A lot of people like to forget that, right? So that's why we have this 12-team platform to even begin with, to weed all this out in the first round to say, okay, fine. You want to argue that SMU and all of them stuff, they don't deserve to be there. Well, SMU is what were they like the 10th or whatever? Like these are the bottom tier teams that we're talking about, 10 through 12. That's fine to be speculative of that and allow these group of five, allow these random teams to hop in there to showcase their talent, right? Now, everyone wants to argue like the committee is getting this wrong, the committee is getting this wrong. I think they got it perfectly right. Part of the reason why is that the biggest problem with not having these teams in here is because you don't have an answer for what to do with these teams and how to make it possible for them to make the playoffs, right? So if you want to say strength of schedule is the only thing that matters, then it's literally just going to turn into the SEC Invitational every year. And that's all it's going to be because you can never argue that Boise State would ever have a strength of schedule to make it into the playoffs. You'll never make that argument.
My reply to that is the committee. If you listen to me, take my advice because I'm gonna tell you how to make this better and how you can get us to be quiet down south. Committee, make a requirement that if any outside conferences that's outside of the Power Five wants to have a legit argument in case to play in the playoffs, so that way we don't come with these arguments and these complaints at the end of the season. Make it a requirement that these teams play good outside competition, at least 2 games on their schedule, then we can have a determining factor of whether or not they can play in the playoffs. For an example, for a team like Boise State, right? They went now Boise State. I really don't have an argument against Boise State other than they shouldn't got a first round bye because they did play Oregon and they took Oregon and they lost by 3 in Eugene. So Boise State, no argument at all because they showed me that they can at least compete with the best teams with the best team in the country, right? My only argument with that is if you want to justify having outside competition in, have them play real competition in the regular season so that way we can legitimately see what these teams can do in bigger atmospheres and it gets better competition. That is all I'm trying to say. That is literally all I'm trying to say. And for an example, like Indiana, right? I think if you want to cut this off between the Big Ten and SEC Invitational, have them two conferences at least clash at least 2 games out of the season, so that way we can have legitimate arguments. Have these other conferences like literally play each other instead of teams. I mean, these big time schools paying small FCS schools $1 million just to put a win on their schedule. That we're not at that point no more, right? We're not at that point. Let's find out who the best 12 teams is, because that what you said, committee. You said 12 best teams. If we're gonna find out who the best 12 teams is, let's do it in the regular season, so that way we don't have complaints come December. That's my only argument.
I think there's some things I can agree with that. What I would say is if you force these teams to say, okay, you have to have one out of conference team in the Power Four, I can actually agree with that. I think that makes a lot of sense to have them do that. So let's talk about Indiana, right? Because we want to talk about Indiana. What's their signature win? Now, obviously, I'm going to sit here and be like, all right, well, what's Texas' signature win if we want to go down that route? But with Indiana, my reason why I don't want to fault Indiana is that how Indiana made their schedule and the outcome of it had nothing to do with Indiana, right? Indiana scheduled Washington and Michigan, two teams that were fighting against each other in the national championship the year prior. And then within a couple months, both their coaches left and their entire team left. There's nothing that Indiana can do about that because the schedule was already set. They already had outside of Ohio State, they already had two other teams that were at least should have been top 25 ranked for them to go up against. So I don't fault Indiana on that because Indiana did everything on top of shout out to Coach Sig for even getting Indiana to that point for how bad Indiana was, right? So I think that's the biggest dilemma is that with this new NIL, with this new transfer portal, and the fact that you have these teams like the Florida States of the world, the Washingtons, the Michigans of the world, where 50 players are going to hit the portal at the end of the year, it's very hard on a scheduling format to say, okay, let's do that, right? I'm going to schedule Florida State. Then the next year, Florida State sucks. So it's like, okay, well, what do you want us to do? We did what you said. We beat this team. And now you're still going to legitimize us because of what happened, the outcome with the other team. There's nothing that we can do about that, right? So then people want to say SEC is the best conference and everything like that. Listen, I understand. They got a lot of NFL talent. They have all this, they have all that. I want to say two things. One, the best team, well, I wouldn't say the best team, but one of the teams that made it to the SEC championship was in the Big 12 last year. So we want to talk about SEC dominance here. There's an asterisk on Texas and Oklahoma because they were in the Big 12 last year. They just got into the SEC. But now that they're in there, now we want to put this giant blanket to say, well, this is real ball. This is SEC football and all that stuff. No, let's call it for what it is. Those they got the same critiques of being in the Big 12, went to the SEC and dominated. We talk about Oklahoma. Now a 6-6 Oklahoma team is a good team now because it's in the SEC. No, if the Oklahoma was in the Big 12, we would never have this argument at all. It's the fact that Oklahoma jumped into the SEC. Now we're making this crazy argument that Oklahoma's a tough team and Alabama shouldn't be just for not scoring a single touchdown against them. I think that's crap. At the end of the day, the committee got it right because the committee had no choice. The SEC, the top SEC teams were losing to the bottom SEC teams in a way that gave them no choice. They couldn't put them in. Ole Miss could have won all the way to go straight to the playoffs, and they lost to Florida at home. And Florida was in the Gasparilla Bowl against Tulane, which shout out to Tulane. But what are we talking about here? You want to look, the only argument that I would really like is South Carolina, because South Carolina legitimately lost a good SEC team. However, the two teams ranked above them lost to terrible teams. So they lost to Alabama, they lost to Ole Miss, right? So unfortunately, there's no way to argue South Carolina because you would have had to force Alabama and Ole Miss up because they had the head-to-head win on that.
That the SEC is kind of like the NFL, right? Anybody can win any given Saturday at any point in time, right? Look at the route they have to go to before they play that conference opponent. Like, for an example, if you got to go through Georgia, Tennessee, Ole Miss, and then you finally play Vanderbilt and you lose to Vanderbilt, well, who the last three teams they played? Like, come on now. They just went through a gauntlet of a 3-game stretch, and you're going to fault them for losing to a Vanderbilt? They are beat up. Every single coach in the SEC all has the same comments every single time you ask them about the SEC. They need rest. It's tough as shit, and it is hard to win on the road in the SEC. Bama lost at Vanderbilt in the SEC. That is a tough thing to do when you're coming off a 3-game stretch where you just playing Tennessee, Texas, Georgia. Like, that is something that is hard to do. And like what the public see is, well, you just lost to Vanderbilt, so it doesn't matter. Well, what about the last 3 teams they beat? You know what I mean? Now real quick, Also, no, back to Indiana thing because I do want to respond to that before it crosses my mind. The Indiana thing is tricky. It is very, very, very tricky. What the public, and by public, no, I'm gonna say me, but what I'm mad about Indiana is that they automatically had a bid when they didn't beat no, like Indiana's spot was safe in the playoffs. Indiana's spot was safe, and that's basically what I'm mad about is that Indiana, if you look at their schedule, and I understand they played the teams that's in front of them, but how come they get an automatic bid for basically doing nothing? Like nothing, everybody else, it's controversy, it's conversations between every other conference, but Indiana, well, we sit back and chill. We're good. We don't have to play no one. We don't have to lose no. We're good. We lost to Ohio State, so we're good. We're good. And then they best two opponents they played, they got smoked. Like smoked. That looks bad on the committee. Like we've been preaching, hey, what have Indiana done, committee? Everybody, what have Indiana done? Well, they played the team, they played the schedule that's in front of them. I get that. But when they finally played a good team, they lose by almost 40 on the road. And then they go on the road again and basically lose by 30 on the road. And they just literally had basically an automatic bid for doing absolutely nothing while everybody else is having conversations about who should be in and who should not be in, while Indiana just free roaming, hovering around the number 6 and number 5 seed. That's not right. We gotta avoid that. We have to put criteria like in place so that way we're not making this mistakes again. All right. And conferences, if y'all want the conference games to matter, have a mini conference tournament. Choose the top 4 teams within the conference and have them do a mini playoffs before the playoffs in the regular season or something. I don't know, but that's not fair for Indiana to have basically an automatic bid. That's my argument.
So Indiana. Well, now I gotta do this argument in reverse. So Indiana didn't have an automatic bid. People forget, but like Indiana was on the fringe of not being in the playoffs. The thing that saved them is that within the next few weeks after they lost, Bama lost. Bama lost to Oklahoma. Miami lost. So teams were losing in the front that was pushing Indiana back into the mix. That's how Indiana got back in. But when Indiana lost, they were on the fringe of actually not being in the playoffs if things stood the same. And actually, we remember that because 3 weeks before the end of the season, we were talking about how there was like 5 SEC teams that could make the playoffs, right? And then literally the next week after that, they all started losing, right? Yep, exactly, right? And then they all lost. So Indiana did played the people that were on their schedule. They made their schedule the year before. But hold on, let me address some of the other things. You made a point that in college football, or in the NFL, any given Sunday, anyone can lose, right? Let's just say that applies to college football, even though, I mean, I'm sure Alabama has such a tough time beating Southern Florida and Mercer every year and all that stuff. But let's just say that's true, right? But if we want to throw that argument in there, what I would say is the SEC boasts about having the best recruits every year and recruiting classes and everything like that, right? So that's your job. That's the point of you being there. If you don't want to be there, then one, you can just leave. You can just leave the conference and go do something else if you want. Or two, like teams have been doing, you can just schedule more out of conference games against softer opponents. But when that started happening, the committee was like, okay, well, this is crap because these are all pay for play teams, and then you're only facing like 3 or 4 SEC teams. Actually, it's that same argument with Texas that we're all pissed off about. It's that Texas should have scheduled more or better SEC opponents than who they had to go against, right? And I agree with that. If you want to be in that conference, that comes with being in that conference. You need to play the teams that are in your conference. If you don't want to do that, you can just leave. Just leave. Hey, if you think Florida will do that good in the Big Ten, just go to the Big Ten then. Go to the Big Ten, be number 4 every year. Hey, you see how Penn State did it? Penn State, it's literally the same story every year. Every ranked team that they go up against, they lose every time, right? And then now you see what this playoff format has given them, right? It's like, okay, Penn State can't beat ranked teams. However, they are good enough to be in this playoffs, and it showed for what they did against SMU. Now, I will say, if I'm a betting man, this is free betting advice. Penn State offense is terrible. It is really bad. And the only thing that saved them was that I truly believe that SMU's QB had money against himself. I 1,000% believe that. To SMU, I don't even blame SMU as the team because I really thought their defense played well. The Penn State's offense didn't score, I believe, mid second quarter. Yeah.
14 total points on offense. And by the way,
Yeah, on
co-
pick sixes. So
to my co-host Nathan Garth said that he was starting to be an Allen believer. I like no offense to the kid, I never had any, nothing against him, but I never thought that. And for people coming out saying that he should be a top 3 quarterback taken in the draft, either the draft class is just that bad, or some people just don't know what ball is. So he didn't move me at all.
Okay. So the last point I made, because I was just remembering this, when it comes to the NFL playoffs. Now, this is where I do agree with you, is that the committee needs to have clear guidelines, right? In the NFL playoffs, the top seeded or the top 4 go to the 4 division winners, correct?
Yes, sir.
And it doesn't matter what their record is, they just have to win in their own individual division. So the jokes that we make about the NFC South and how bad they are, right? And how there's years where it's a losing record, it's an even record team that makes it in there. And then the wild card is like a 12-14 that's in there, right? But that's the guideline that they set in there. And we're all okay with that. We don't look at that committee when that 12-14 goes and blows out the Falcons in the playoffs, right? We don't look back at the NFL committee and it's like, this is a terrible job. You guys are doing bad. No, that's the point of the first round. You have 3-4 rounds of football, and that's the point, to weed out the teams that don't be right, and that's to weed out the teams that don't need to be there. And that's why I applaud the committee, is that that's exactly what we want. The first round isn't supposed to be 4 championship games. That's not the point. The first round is to weed out the teams like the SMUs. There's nothing that SMU did the entire season to say that SMU wasn't a good team. All the teams they were supposed to beat, they beat the crap out of. They lost to Clemson in the ACC championship, which there's ever an argument for a team not to be there. It really was Clemson. Clemson was not in the playoffs until they won the ACC championship, right? That's my point. Is that if we're just clear on the guidelines, that's fine. But this weird notion that every single first round game needs to be the greatest game we've ever seen because it's the college playoffs is just not going to happen. And just like what you said, home field advantage matters, right? Hey, listen, I love this.
Talk to the teams out there. Talk to the teams
No. I'm going to talk to you. I got a good question for the fans here, all right? For all these players and teams that you want to argue for. So let's say Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina, okay? My only argument to you is that they would have been the bottom tier seeds anyway, right? Would any of those teams have gone out to those away games and would have won? I want to know that, because I guarantee you they won't. Our only argument is that they would make it a closer game. But I guarantee you, if Alabama went out to Notre Dame in that weather, in that climate, they wouldn't have won that game. I'm a firm believer of that.
After seeing the atmosphere of these home games and what the North bring as far as weather,
Mm-hmm.
I 100% agree with you. It would have been very hard for a SEC team to go up there on the road in front of 100,000 fans and win a goddamn football game. That would have been one hard team to do.
Exactly. So that's literally the synopsis of my argument, is that everyone wants to argue about who they should have put in there, but no one's arguing that that team was going to go out there and win, right? And that's what we saw. Like, hey, listen, blowouts happen. I'd rather it happen in the first round than in the national championship game.
Yeah,
by the time we get to the national championship game, those teams deserve to be there. I 100% believe that.
I think Miami the only one who really got screwed from it, like, because they kind of like sits in that Alabama like situation. Just don't lose to Syracuse, right? I mean, I get it. Like, I really would have loved to see Miami in there. Miami, I really think they really screwed y'all as far as the playoffs. I would have loved to see y'all, because I think if you ask me straight up, if that Miami team would have played Penn State at home, I don't think Penn State would have been able to score the points to keep up with Miami. But at the same time, Miami defense is horrendous. So that would have been a very tight game, and that would have came down to the wire.
Honestly,
really, really, really tight game. That would have been a really tight game.
I like that too. I actually agree. I think Miami probably will be the only team that can go out to one of those teams and beat them, and that's because of how much firepower they have. I said it earlier before that I thought Miami had the best offense if they were to make it to the playoffs, just because of their scoring ability and Cam Ward and what they're able to do. But obviously their defense couldn't stop a South Dakota State.
I'm a former receiver, and I got to talk about this Smith kid from Ohio State. Listen, I want to be on record when I say this.
Jeremiah Smith
as a true freshman, If he was eligible to go in the draft right now today, I think he would be the first overall pick.
No, stop,
Listen,
guys.
this kid is 18 years old, a true freshman at the Ohio State. He's 1,000+ yard receiver. He is absolutely dominant, and he's a second team AP All American as a true freshman. He's 6'4", 215. He has speed. He has the jump ball. He has the separation. This kid, listen, this kid is next generation talent. Who he remind me of? He's a Megatron 2.0. He's literally a Megatron. I'm telling you, this kid is the best freshman receiver I have seen, I think, ever. Let's just say a team like the Bears traded up and they already had their quarterback, like got the trade for somebody. I would draft this kid at #1 overall. He's that good.
Chicago Bears, I'm telling you right now, if you ever do something like that with how bad our offensive line is, I am taking that down. I'm taking this thing down, and I am refusing to watch. If they do something as crazy as that, there's a lot to say. I'm going to clip this, and I'll let the comments take care of you on that one for such a crazy take. Jeremiah Smith's not even the best freshman receiver out there today, which is funny.
Not for him.
Ryan Williams. 1,000%. Yeah, 1,000%.
Now you need to
that kid's 17 years old.
Hell
that kid's 17 years old.
has over Jeremiah Smith. Are you serious?
Yes, I am.
Compare stats right now.
No. Hey, like I said, I'll let the comments take care of you. But I got Ryan Williams from Alabama. He's one of the greatest, youngest players I've ever seen in my life. Right. Well, before we head off, I'm curious. Okay, round 2. I want to get your predictions right now on who you're thinking. So, first one, Ohio State, Oregon.
I'm taking Ohio State to win. I just think Jeremiah Smith is going to be big time. I think he's going to go for 152 touchdowns with 7 receptions. To be honest with you, it all depends on Chip Kelly. Listen, Chip Kelly, you were in your bag versus Tennessee. I don't know what the hell got into Chip Kelly, but his offensive play calling versus Tennessee was the finest play. Bro, he was calling plays, and I was like, bro, this guy's running wide open. Chip Kelly was killing that man-to-man. If you want to beat Ohio State, you got to have a crazy D-line, and you got to play zone behind it, or you need – because if you play man-to-man, they got too many receivers that's going to get open.
Yeah.
You got to have a crazy D-line. So I'm going Ohio State just depending on Chip Kelly. So basically Ohio State's my answer. Chip Kelly called a good game. Ohio State wins the game. Chip Kelly come out there and shits his pants. Oregon wins. So
shout out to it being 20 degrees and windy in Columbus, Ohio, because that gave them at least 14 points right there. But I also have so I have Ohio State. The reason why is that I think they win this. It saves Ryan Day's job, and I think he's really locked in on that. And 2, they were good enough to beat him the first time. I think it gives them extra motivation to beat them again. It's hard to beat a team twice, so that'd be good. Going into the next one, we have Texas versus Arizona State. Who do you have?
I got Texas by now.
I also have Texas by now. Actually, let me actually put that up because I think Arizona State is a good mark for this. Is that we should have auto bids for conference champions, but they shouldn't get an automatic bye.
I totally agree. But what criteria would you put in place to determine whether a team gets a bye?
Well, it should just be ranked on who's the best teams based on the rankings. So if you're actually 1 through 4 in the rankings, then you deserve a bye, and that's what we should do it on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying.
yeah,
So
but because like I said, like teams like Boise State and stuff, it's like Boise State was what, like ranked 12 or something like that, and then now they're the 3 seed with automatic bye. I don't think it should be like that.
Well, it's like a situation with that because at one point in time you had 5 Big Ten teams ranked in the top 5. So
Yeah.
it would have been a Big Ten basically home playoff game versus all Big Tens would have had bye or all SEC teams.
Hey, whoever the 4 best teams, that you earned it. They do it. You earned it, right? So that's what I would do. So then the next one we have Penn State versus Boise State. What do you?
Tricky one.
This is the most interesting one, I think. Actually,
if that Penn State offense show up, I don't think Penn State win the game. If that Penn State offense show up versus SMU last week, and mind you, this is on a neutral site, I'm taking Boise State points, but I'm taking Penn State to win. So I think whatever the spread is, I think Boise State covers the spread, but I think Penn State wins the game.
I think I think we're going to realize Boise State is a lot better than what people think, and it's going to shatter your whole strength of schedule argument that you have. I think Boise State plays them very well. My heart is for Boise State to win. However, we'll just say from a talent standpoint, I think Penn State just is going to have a bigger, more athletic defensive line, front seven, that'll be able to at least calm down Genty and then force them to pass more, which will be an advantage to Penn State's defense there. So I'm going to go Penn State, but I think it's going to be close. I think Boise State is going to give them a run for their money.
Yeah, so basically,
And then,
Boise State covers, but Penn State wins.
And then the last one is Notre Dame and Georgia.
I got Georgia winning the national championship, so you know my answer to this. The reason why I'm taking Georgia is because Notre Dame can't throw the football. I don't know if anybody watched the game, but Notre Dame cannot throw the football. They cannot throw the football. They kind of have the Penn State, story. Yeah. They really do. They was led by the defense. Offense has good field position. They went down and they scored some points because they had amazing field position. You slow down the running back Love. He's really good, by the way. Georgia's going to be able to slow him down. Then Notre Dame's going to have to put the ball in the air. It's going to come over to a game of turnovers and who win the turnover battle. But I have Georgia winning by 13 points because Notre Dame just flat out can't throw the football.
Yeah, Notre Dame has the exact same story every year, every time they've ever been in the playoffs, everything like that. And it's very straightforward. If you can stop the run, you're going to beat Notre Dame. Yeah. It's as simple as that. That's what they've always been. That's what they always will be at this point. I would put the house on Georgia's front seven since they're the best front seven in football, in my opinion. So Notre Dame isn't going to be able to run the ball. They're going to just flat out lose. Now, if they ever find a way to run the ball, then yes, they can actually beat Georgia because that Notre Dame defense is top 10. It's legit. And I think they are going to hold Georgia pretty well. But again, if they can't run the ball, it's not. There's no point. I don't trust Leonard
he can't.
I don't trust him to have 30 pass attempts in a game. So we'll see what happens. But for you guys let us know what you think, who you have winning at all. And then, of course, let me know what you think about the committee. Do you think they made the right decision, wrong decision? Where do you stand on that and everything? Got anything else?
No, that's all I got. I still think Jeremiah Smith should be, as a true freshman, if he was going in this draft, he would be first round pick.
Well, it would start by saying his name correctly, Jeremiah Smith.
Jeremiah Smith will be a first overall pick when it's time to come up in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely not. But go ahead, like, follow, subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next video.